Hey, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan?
You know, there. I got nothing.
You know those weird things on your shelf that you use to...
Those paper things?
The things in between the bookends. What are they called?
Those are called marijuana rolling weed.
Time Life Collection of Mysteries of the Ancient World.
Do you mean the Reader's Digest condensed versions?
That's right.
The Colliers. Yeah, well, I had one of those books, guys. I found one of those things.
A book?
I gave it a read.
An honest-to-God book?
The whole thing.
Wow. Cover to cover.
I was going to say no pictures, but it does have pictures, and we'll talk about those. I'm going to do a book report this week, guys.
Okay.
Because remember last week I did a little story about a group of folks called the Anthill Kids, and that
I was really trying not to remember that.
And that
remind us of that.
Bummed everybody the fuck out.
I think we lost half our listeners.
Truly.
We met with a group of kids yesterday in Provo that are part of the Secular Students Alliance.
The Anthill Kids?
No.
Okay.
But one of the kids was like, "Hi, your Uncle Mark. It's so great to meet you. I'm really fucked up about the Anthill Kids right now."
James really said that.
So that was a low-down, dirty, bad thing to have done. So I promised this week to do something dumb and funny, and as far as I know, does not have a body count. But it's such a train wreck of terrible thinking and scholarship, it might, but anyone who may have died of it would be too embarrassed to admit it. So that they would then again die of embarrassment. So this week we will not be discussing a drunken murder pig in the swamps of Quebec, but rather a book that has had shockingly too much influence in the minds of the credulous, and that is 1968's Chariots of the Gods, ? Written by ridiculous Swissman Erich von Däniken.
Now, this is the one that's about the white guys running races in Oxford. Is that right?
Wow, that was obscure, but I got there.
Yeah.
You got there eventually?
Yeah, I got there with the Vangelis song.
We get one Chariots of Fire reference a week.
That's right.
Just blew it.
Damn it. So, and I don't know why that this book has a question mark in the title.
Somebody's going to at me and say that it was Cambridge or something.
It makes me so mad that there's a question mark in the name of this book. So
it really has a question mark?
Yeah, it's Chariots of the Gods.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
What a way to make a statement. So I alluded to this book a couple weeks ago in the Pyramid Power segment. The Pyramid of Khufu is a subject Däniken has more than a few hilarious and stupid ideas about, and more on those.
Däniken?
Däniken.
What? I don't know what that is.
Von Däniken, the name of the author.
Oh, my God.
You're going to hear it a bunch. So, but overall, the gist of the book is that the wonders of the ancient world are too wondrous to have been designed, conceived, and built by the duskier races on whose land they stand, and that surely it was alien visitors who built your assorted henges and ziggurats we rightly admire in awe today.
Obviously.
This is the overall idea of what's called the ancient astronauts theory, also called a steaming pile of racist anti-scientific bullshit. Let us revisit the how-to heretics' time-tested rule of thumb when marveling at the wonders of the ancient world. Just because white people didn't build it doesn't mean aliens did. That's it. So
hot take, moving on.
Spread it far and wide. So back to the Chariots of the Gods ? As I read this book, I found it useful to read it in the voice of Jermaine Clement's absurd Dr. Ronald Chevalier from Gentleman Broncos. Do you remember? Did you see that? He was so brilliant in it. Terrible movie, but he was delicious as a self-serious hack writer, perfect for today's subject.
Oh my God.
And in that voice, which is very hard to do, here is the for real first line of the Chariots of the Gods ? It took courage to write this book, and it will take courage to read it. That's the for real opening line.
Uncle Mark, you're so brave.
Yes, what a courageous act.
It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times.
But Von Däniken seems to imagine the scientific archaeological establishment would mock and ridicule him, and he was right.
Yeah.
So let us screw our courage to the sticking place together.
I mean, he's really staking out some area next to Darwin, isn't he?
You just stepped on a Shakespeare reference. Did you realize that?
What?
Yeah, I said, let us screw our courage to the sticking place together, dear listeners.
That's true. I didn't mean to step on that. That's from the Scottish play.
It is, indeed. Doug's going to...
Not do that.
Okay.
No, Macbeth is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And let us dive Helmet first.
Okay.
Into this vast universe of derp.
I did not put on a helmet for this.
You got your space helmet on.
Okay.
Van Daniken's research, and that is in air quotes, appears to have consisted of passing through some of the world's great museums at a brisk walk, if not a Tom Cruise-style dead sprint. Here he describes some Sumerian artifacts he doesn't actually name. The old and I quote, the old cuneiform inscriptions credit the Sumerians with a literally fantastic lifetime. Thus, the 10 original kings ruled for a total of 456,000 years.
Oh.
And the 23 kings had the arduous task of reconstruction after the flood, which he capitalizes. They still managed to hold the reins of government for 24,510 years, 3 months, and 3.5 days.
3.5.
What? So you guys have heard of biblical literalists. We've had a good laugh at the expense of Ken Ham and his ilk. But our friend Von Daniken appears to be an everything literalist.
Right.
He takes, at face value, the mythic writings on unspecified clay tablets as factual reporting of real events and spans of time.
Well, look, if they took the time to chisel it, they wouldn't do that if it weren't real.
Yeah, that's
just logic.
It's a very difficult writing process to waste on a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, much like a golden plate. That's why it's true. So what he's saying is that Sumerian culture existed for 500,000 years. Our species in its current form is only 200,000 years old, but the Sumerians had palaces and kings and writing and shit for 300,000 years before that. Sure.
Yeah, because aliens, duh.
Duh. But let's not get stuck in the Sumeria of a very distant prehistory, guys.
Okay.
Von Daniken calls for a utopian archaeological year. What would that be like? Let him take us there, with him and us to there. And I quote, a utopian architectural year is due, during which archaeologists, physicists, chemists, geologists, metallurgists, and all the corresponding branches of science ought to concentrate their efforts on one single question, did our forefathers receive visits from outer space? He courageously continues, the team for the utopian archaeological year would naturally include a group of divers who would investigate... Wait till I get to the end of this sentence. Investigate the Dead Sea for radioactive traces of an atomic explosion over Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, naturally, right?
All right, somebody get me James Cameron. I need his little submarine.
Yeah.
Somebody get me the Miscavige, because they're going to fund this thing.
And Greg Louganis.
Greg Louganis. And so
what Cousteaus are left?
I mean,
Get me a Cousteau.
he expounds on the original ground zero in ancient Israel idea here, and I quote, and when the morning arose, the angels hastened Lot, saying, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters. That story ends up really weird. Which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters. There was a lot of hand-holding. The Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they brought him forth abroad, that he said, escape for thy life. Look not behind thee, neither stay thou in the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. Haste thee, escape thither. Vanaken bravely continues. According to this report, there is no doubt the, quote, angels possessed a power unknown to the inhabitants. Report.
It's a report.
He calls a story from the book of Genesis. My God, what a dope. But wait, there's more. Let us imagine that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed according to plan, i.e., deliberately by nuclear explosion. Perhaps, let us speculate a little further, the, quote, angels simply wanted to destroy some dangerous fissionable material at the same time wiping out a human brood they found unpleasant.
What are we going to do with these nuclear bombs?
No, I got to blow this shit up
I
somewhere.
got so much plutonium, I don't know what to do with it all. Do you have any ideas? Can we brainstorm this one?
There has to be another way.
You know who I don't like is everybody in those cities. I think we can make this a win-win.
And we all know the story. Lot's wife turned around and looked straight at the atomic sun. Nowadays, no one is surprised that she fell dead on the spot. Okay.
Okay.
A lot to unpack there.
Point of order.
Yeah. But firstly, looking at an atomic blast doesn't automatically kill you. It's
Does
not.
it
It's not fucking Bird Box.
Does it turn you into salt?
Exactly.
Or does looking away save you?
Right. People go, ha ha! Curses! You foiled my weapon. Being too close to it is what kills you. And
The problem at Nagasaki was that everybody looked.
Yeah.
Right.
All the Japanese just happened to be looking skyward at that moment. And the story does not say she fell dead on the spot or had her shadow etched into the concrete like the unfortunate souls in Hiroshima. It says she turned into a pillar of salt. Not a known outcome of atomic blasts turning people into seasonings.
That we know about.
Well, and that's the thing. It says salt.
Yes.
You believe everything of the story until it's like the salt.
Oh,
Right.
you believe everything and more.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You add to the story, you get it. I mean, maybe the salt is just seasoning.
Yes, the whole thing is hilariously silly, but there is another theme there that is pretty constant one for von Daniken, and that is eugenics and a casual sort of racism.
Oh, fun.
When he mentions the angels taking out, quote, a human brood they found unpleasant, what is he talking about? Well, part of his ancient astronauts theory is that the ancient space travelers not only bequeathed us some cool-ass buildings, but us ourselves. According to him, we are part of a breeding program where our pre-human DNA was mixed with the race of super space beings, again, because humans, specifically brown ones, were too stupid to do all those cool things. Here's an example of the casual language he uses describing non-white people. And there's a lot of this. Some parts of our Earth are still inhabited by primitive peoples to whom a machine gun is a weapon of the devil. Most people think machine guns are bad.
I'm kind of...
Well, most good people. In this case, a jet aircraft may well be an angelic vehicle to them, and a voice coming from a radio set might seem the voice of a god. These last primitive peoples too naively hand down from generation to generation their sagas, their impressions of technical achievements that we take for granted. They still scratch their divine figures on their and their wonderful ships coming from heaven on cliffs and cave walls. In this way, these savage peoples have actually preserved for us what we seek today. So, pretty boilerplate colonist thinking from a conservative old white dude from Switzerland. But here's a real gem of the ugliness behind the comedy. Here he is talking about the astronomical achievements of the Mayans. The Mayans left behind them calculations to last 64 million years. Later inscriptions dealt in units that probably approach 400 million years.
Amazing.
So many zeros, which the Mayans invented, by the way. The famous Venusian formula could quite plausibly have been calculated by an electronic brain. At any rate, it is difficult to believe that it originated from a jungle people.
Well,
Why? What does jungle have to do with the intelligence of a given population? So go fuck yourself, stupid Central American people who created several of the world's most fascinating civilizations. You're too dumb to count to 400 million. Yeah. What a dismissive, culturally arrogant piece of Swiss shit. So his cultural arrogance might be easier to swallow if it wasn't anyway backed up by good scholarship and anything remotely resembling the scientific method, but it is not. Let us wade further into this swamp of gobbledygook and unprovable assumptions. Staying just with the Mayans. Von Daniken claims that a Mayan inscription on a tomb in Copan, it's actually in Palenque, but such trifling facts mustn't get in the way of the truth. He says it depicts a space traveler reclining in his spacecraft.
Ooh.
So that's probably true, except that it's not. People who've done more than just jog past the Mayan section at the museum, actual Mayanists who have deciphered Mayan glyphs and symbols tell us it's a perfectly normal depiction of a king surrounded by serpent gods whose bodies Von Daniken insists is the rocket outline and whose feather beards he insists is the rocket exhaust. He is 1,000% wrong. In India, Von Daniken claims there is an iron pillar of unknown age, origin, and provenance that has never rusted. Therefore, it was clearly made by people from beyond the stars. Except it wasn't. The name of the king who had it made in 420 CE is actually on the fucking thing. It does rust, but is made out of an iron alloy that the Indians developed and have long been cognizant of. So amazing work there, Von Daniken. He also mentions famed astro know-it-all and turtleneck model Carl Sagan more than once in his book. He claims Sagan declared that the Martian moon Phobos is an artificial satellite because it lacks the presumed mass of a rock that size ought to have. No, he did not. That was hypothesized by a co-author of one of Sagan's books, but Sagan himself rejected the idea of it being made by intelligent beings.
Yeah, but he was kind of near to somebody who said it, so...
Adjacent. Yeah.
I just feel like...
Just throw his name in there.
I feel like you're being unreasonable.
I'm the bad Swiss guy. Sagan, not overly pleased with his name being in von Daniken's book, as you can imagine, commented that writing as careless as von Daniken's, whose principal thesis is that our ancestors were dummies, should be so popular as a sober commentary on the credulousness and despair of our times.
Boy, things have not gotten better, Carl.
No, it's good.
Please do not come check in with the future.
You're gone, Carl, and you're the lucky one. He continues, I also hope for the continuing popularity of books like The Chariots of the Gods, in high school and college logic courses as object lessons in sloppy thinking. I know of no recent books so riddled with logical and factual errors as the works of von Daniken. You got Sagan burned. And we do know exactly why Phobos' mass is weird. It's because it's a giant booger of rubble and dirty ice rather than a dense mass of solid rock. But sure, if you don't know why a thing is, always just declare aliens did it. It's the little green men of the gaps fallacy.
It's the problem of so much bad thinking that, like, we don't have an explanation. So a non-natural explanation must be the case.
The most absurd possible explanation is obviously the right one.
Like, science can't explain this. Therefore,
yeah.
Aliens / energy / vibrations.
And throw a Jew in for good measure.
And Jews.
So von Daniken is also fairly certain the Ark of the Covenant was a high energy battery, like an Energizer-style battery, and or a radio for speaking to the gods from beyond the Van Allen belt.
Wow.
Are there more true alien astronaut facts in this wondrous book? ? Of course there are, silly. Von Daniken makes a ton of hay out of the mysterious map once belonging to a Turkish admiral called Piri Reis, who compiled it around 1513. While it does, as Von Daniken claims, show the outlines of Europe and parts of the Americas in surprisingly accurate relief, it does not, as he bizarrely claims, show dead accurate mountain ranges in Antarctica that are buried in ice and only observable from space. It doesn't show any part of Antarctica at all, as the map ends well north of there, and because he's a super genius, he includes a picture of the map in his book without Antarctica in it.
Well, Antarctica's in it, it's just cut off.
That's right. Well, it's there. You just have to look for it. And of course, he has many opinions about how the Egyptians couldn't possibly have built their own damned pyramids without Major Tom's help. He claims their tools were not sufficient to the task, that they were too ignorant of the magnetic compass directions. Yes, the Egyptians were deeply stupid. And there is no evidence there were ever any workers employed there in large numbers. No. Well, there are many mysteries.
I can point to some pretty large evidences of workers. I don't know.
The pyramid?
The pyramid
In the
itself.
form of the pyramid. While there are many mysteries around this magnificent structure, there are also some conclusive answers. The tool marks are still visible in the quarries from which the stones came. There is extensive evidence of huge worker encampments and facilities to feed them. By the way, they were not Jewish slaves. And while the Egyptians at the time did not have the magnetic compass, they used celestial reckoning to determine directions accurately. Wrong on all counts, and not wrong after the fact. This is information that was known at the time of his writing. But he then goes into some bizarre math ahas about the pyramid, stating, and I quote, "Is it really coincidence that the height of the Pyramid of Cheops multiplied by 1,000 million, 98 million miles, is the answer, corresponds approximately to the distance between the Earth and the Sun? Is it a coincidence that the meridian running through the pyramids divides the continents and oceans into 2 equal halves? Is it coincidence that the base area of the pyramid divided by twice its height is the figure pi? Is it coincidence that calculations of the weight of the Earth were found? And is it also coincidence that the rocky ground on which the structure stands is carefully and accurately leveled?" I want to scream.
Oh my God.
No.
Can I just say that there is something so stunningly beautiful about
This recklessness.
about like someone saying, look if you take this and you multiply it by that, it is almost a little bit close to
Right.
the number
Yeah.
that you'd need
For this completely arbitrary distance.
If you multiply it by
this arbitrary fact that I
a
just...
number that I'm making up.
Yeah.
And why? Why, when the Egyptians are like, or the aliens are like, I'm going to build a pyramid.
Yeah.
Here's what I need it to do.
Yeah.
It's got to roughly cut Africa in half.
Yeah.
It's got to be this distance times this to the sun. Like,
Right.
Why?
So it is not coincidence that the ground is accurately leveled. That's what you do before you build a building, moron. The Pyramid of Khufu isn't even the only pyramid built with inside of itself built on leveled ground. Egypt is chock-a-block with buildings built on leveled ground, as is everywhere else. And as you were saying, as for the calculations about the distance to the sun and shit, Egyptians did not use miles as a metric. His number is off by over 5 million miles anyway. And if I multiply my socks by my cat and get Thursday as a result, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? It's crazy making.
It's technically like almost Friday.
So even with all this garbage, and even with several clear cases of plagiarism within it, yes, he actually stole some of this poppycock from other people. This book has sold tens of millions of copies, which is pretty damned depressing because not all those purchases were as ironic as mine.
I bet money I could point right now to the people in my Facebook feed who have read and believe this shit.
A guy I work with and respect deeply, when I was telling him my segment today, he's like, "Oh, yeah, I read that book. It was really interesting." I'm like, no. Okay.
No.
So,
I mean, interesting. I'm finding it interesting.
well, here's the thing is, for like science fiction purposes, it's a fascinating idea about the origins of life, right? Like Prometheus, that the Earth was seeded with this life, and then a really bad movie followed it.
Or Stargate.
Or LRH, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if we're going to talk about like
Yeah.
atomic bombs and exploding aliens,
Yeah.
there's lots of
They're all
places to
stupid,
look.
but it's fun to think about. So, von Daniken, the Dr. Ronald Chevalier of the pseudoscience world, ends his strange and terrible book exactly how you probably imagine he would, and I quote, "It is not our fault that the Japanese statue of Tokomai, which is many thousands of years old, had modern fastenings and eye apertures on its helmet. It is not our fault that the stone relief from Palenque exists. It is not our fault that Admiral Piri Reis did not burn his ancient maps." Why would he burn them? "It is not our fault that the old books and traditions of human history exhibit so many absurdities. But it is our fault if we know all this, but disregard it and refuse to take it seriously." But you didn't think this is the end of the amazing von Daniken, did you? Indeed it is not. In addition to writing several more books after this one that I will not read, one of which was written in prison while he was doing time for fraud and embezzlement, he opened, and this is true, a Chariots of the Gods themed amusement park called Jungfrau Park in Switzerland in 2003.
Wow.
I want to go to there.
Yeah.
Well, you can go see it yourself. Oh, wait, no, you can't. It went bankrupt in 2006.
I know.
Anyway, bye, Eric von Daniken, ? May your sweet chariot not burn you to a crisp with its rocket blast when it swings low to collect you.
Oh my goodness.
So please don't read that book. It's very stupid. Actually, you know what? It was a crazy fun read.
Yeah.
Because it's so crackers. It's just so fucking bananas.
It's like watching anything on the History Channel now.
Yeah.
Right, totally.
And half the book is just him bitching about how he's been treated by the scientific community.
They won't accept me at all, and that is their fault.
I dare to ask these questions.
That's right.
Yeah. So what fun.
Throw it in the fire.
Yep.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Well, thanks, Uncle Mark, for that non-enlightening bit of nonsense.
Let's move on to the next uninhabited planet.
Yes, indeed.